Hello and welcome to MotorInc First. Kartikeya has just returned from the city of lakes, Udaipur in Rajasthan, having driven the new electric Tata Curvv. And on MotorInc First, we're going to discuss it in great detail. I've decided not to be super critical of Tata this time because I think it's been done to death and it's predictable now. So I'm going to be as helpful as possible in trying to discover the purpose of the car, what it's good at, and what you should do next in terms of considering it or not considering it. So Kartikeya, let's begin at the beginning.
Okay, my only request right now, right up top, is don't ask me of the variants. I don't know. This enough for us to think and process without getting into the variants. The usual names and all are there.
I said I'll be helpful. I'm not
Yeah,
criticizing you.
and I hope you have great questions. That's my only request.
Okay, so let's begin at the beginning. Who is it for? Or would you prefer I ask what is it?
Both are great questions.
Which one would you like to attack first?
Let's start with what is it?
So Kartik, what is the Tata Curvv Electric?
So you're going to be looking at the Tata Curvv and thinking a lot of things because it's bigger, it looks very different. And so you think, and it is because of those things, the size being bigger, you'll think that it's in the segment above. But effectively, we can fix what you can expect from the Tata Curvv by calling it the Tata Nexon Sportback.
Okay.
By and large, if you've liked the Nexon EV, but thought that it was, too familiar, had been around too long, and needed something fresh and new, well, then the Tata Curvv would be interesting for you.
Okay.
But having said that, there are certain strengths of the Nexon which you lose out on with the Curvv. What they are, we'll get to. What is the big step up when you get to the Curvv? Well, there are two things when you compare it to the Nexon. One is the boot. It's a 500-liter boot. So that length that you get of the vehicle, that's the biggest benefit of that, is down to the luggage space that you have. And the second thing is the range. These are the two things on which the Curvv has gone beyond what the Nexon offers and gives you let's say more flexibility. Luggage space, obviously, and in terms of range, you have now two battery packs. Like you had with the Nexon, you had two sets of battery packs, which gave you different ranges. Here also, it's the same thing. Top spec is a claimed range of 585, which is ARAI. But Tata themselves say that it's good for 400 in the real world. And we'll talk about the range as well. So, does that kind of clarify who is it for? Because I know a lot of people are going to be looking at this and thinking that, hey, this is the step up. Maybe existing Nexon EV owners and thinking, hey, this is the step up. But it's really not a step up. And there are compromises that you'll make compared to the Nexon. When you step from the Nexon into this, there are certain trade-offs that you'll have to deal with. One specific one, which we will talk about. But for now, does this set context of what is it?
Yes, but then I want to ask the question saying, can the Indica Vista platform grow even further?
So what they are saying is that now you have to de-link the architecture that you think of that way, because this is Acti EV, which came with the Punch, right? So they are saying that now what we're using as the floor pan is different. Now let's say if the ICE version, we have to compare it to the ICE version, this has a different floor pan to that. So that would be the most closely related to the Indica Vista. And in terms of that as well, keep in mind that this has a longer wheelbase by 60 mm. So it's a bigger car in that sense. So a lot has changed with that. In terms of how it feels on the inside, how it does a lot of the things, it's very familiar. And which is why I'm going to say that it is a Nexon. And I think for people looking at this, even if Tata has not called it the Nexon, in your head, call it the Nexon Curvv. And so then when you go to experience the car, things will feel better in tune with your expectations.
Okay, but to be fair, when BMW did this, X5 didn't become X5.5, it became X6. So you're saying it's the same kind of story. Skeleton wahi, body nahi.
Okay, one sec. X5 to X6, I don't remember what was the change. They were the same size, right?
Yeah, just the roof was changed.
Yeah, but this has grown more in terms of length, right? So it's actually physically a bigger car. So it's gone from being a sub-4 meter SUV to a Creta size SUV. So it's gone from a Brezza rival to a Creta rival.
So visually, when you see this car, you perceive a difference in size straight away.
On paper, like you're not going to help but think about that, right? Because now it's 4.3 meters. So which means it's Creta. So it should be that experience. It should be that practicality.
Understood.
So in terms of boot, yes, it's better than anything in that size.
Okay.
But when you get to experiencing the car on the inside, it's not in the Creta's territory.
Understood.
Right?
Okay. So let's go in straight into the cabin and talk about what's happening and what's missing.
So first, we'll start a little bit from the outside. So this car, when you look at it from the front,
It looks like a Nexon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It looks just like the Nexon. And when you get inside the car, it's inescapable that this feels like a Nexon on the inside.
Okay. Is that a problem?
In some ways, yes.
Okay.
Because there were certain issues with the Nexon, which we've discussed before, right?
Yep.
The X1 connection, that the ergonomics, the basic conveniences. And in this regard, at the end of this conversation, I want to tell you two stories,
Okay.
which just, we will end on that. We won't talk about it now, but we'll end on that, which will take care of all these little things. So like on the Nexon, there's no cup holders. There's only a wireless charger. You can have one or the other. The door pockets, terrible. Same thing here. The seating position is a bit strange. Same thing here. Dashboard is a bit high. Basically, the A pillar, the windscreen, the B pillar is all the same. After that, the C pillar onwards, the shape is different. So that part of the experience is different from the Nexon.
Is it an improvement?
And that's the problem. Because the Nexon had one strength. In the sub 4 meter segment, the back seat is the best. And not just best by being better than other mediocre back seats, it's an excellent back seat. In this case, the back seat is the weakest link. Okay? One of the factors, of course, is because of the roofline, which slopes down a fair bit. So headroom is a genuine issue. If you're a 6-footer, it's a problem. It has recline adjustable back seat, so if you recline it all the way back, it's a little bit better. If you get it to the more upright angle, which is what I prefer, headroom is tight, and that's despite the roof being scooped out. And also, we didn't talk about the EV architecture at all. I did mention that the floor pan is different.
Yep.
Because now here, the battery packs, it has 2 battery packs, both of which are larger than the Nexon. The Nexon's biggest battery pack is 40 kilowatt hours.
Okay.
This one's base battery pack is 45 kilowatt hours.
Okay.
And the top spec, which is the one that we drove, was 55 kilowatt hours. Now, this battery pack itself is larger.
Yeah.
The base battery pack, obviously, it has its chemistry is very, or not chemistry rather, it uses cylindrical cells, like with the Nexon, whereas the top spec uses prismatic cells, so they can pack it better. So in the same space, they're managing to do both battery packs.
Okay.
Right? So the case itself is the same. So unlike the Nexon, where in the low-range version, Nexon EV, the low-range version, the floor is lower, so your comfort is better. That's not the case here. Both have the same battery pack, the floor is higher. So I'm going to put those pictures up here. Irrespective of how I place my feet, the thighs just do not rest on the seat.
So you're too tall for this car?
I am. Can you believe it?
I'm just going to say here, Kartik is 5'6". You can draw your own conclusions. I told you I will not be critical of Tata, and you see how carefully I'm managing this conversation.
And so I was really taken aback with that, because I would have thought that with this, you would fix that one shortcoming which was in the Nexon EV, because the long range was at a disadvantage when compared to the medium range.
Yeah, because there is a height difference in the floor. Yeah.
And in this regard, when you start comparing it to the Nexon EV, you realize that there are small little things which are not really a step up. So like ground clearance, for instance, the Nexon medium range is 205 mm. This at the highest is 190 mm. And in fact, with the larger battery pack, which weighs 70-80 kilos more, the ground clearance drops a couple of mm, which is not much. But the point is that it's the same setup. The reason why the ground clearance goes down, as they said as well, is that the weight is more.
Right.
So there are all these small so which...
Okay, just because we are comparing between the Nexon and the Curvv a lot, can we just quickly set a price context also as to what you'd pay extra for a Curvv? So top range to top range, for example?
Right. So the Nexon, if we talk about the long range, costs between 17.5 to 19.5.
Okay.
This starts at about 17.5. Yes. Similarly goes up to 19.5 for the 45 kilowatt hour. So the 55 kilowatt hour version goes up to 22 lakhs ex showroom. These are all ex showroom prices.
Okay.
Right. So it's just take it from 17
So about 3 to 4 lakh rupees extra version to version, not accounting for the extra range you'd get in that money.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So it's a bit more expensive. In fact, if anybody is looking to go for the long range version of the Nexon, it almost feels like, hey, go for the Curvv instead. When you look at it on paper,
Correct.
not accounting for the backseat experience and all those kind of things, it's
Right.
there or thereabouts. Because even if you look at performance, the Nexon EV long range, the most powerful Nexon, the claim 0 to 100 time is 8.9. And for the 55, which is the more powerful Curvv, the time is 8.6.
So not significantly faster, just a smidge.
So again, powertrain, the motor is the same motor. There's no difference. It's working in the same rev range. It's not like it's unlocked more revs to generate the more power. The difference is because of the larger battery packs. 5 kilowatt hour more on the base, and the top is 55, so 15 kilowatt hours more. So the amount of energy it can draw quickly at a time is more.
Okay.
So it can generate more power. So the top spec is doing 167 PS, whereas the Nexons is 150 PS. Acceleration, I said the difference is 0.3 seconds. In terms of the driving experience, it feels mature, which the Nexon always did in terms of the electric architecture. It felt predictable, it felt smooth, especially after the facelift, where they went to this motor.
Correct.
They started using a new motor, you remember?
Yep.
It works differently. The revs are higher, the way it delivers torque is smoother. So all of that sense of maturity of the electric powertrain, you get with this as well.
Understood.
It has the same regen modes, 3 levels of regen plus and the zero mode, and it all works nicely. So the regen modes are useful. They had bumped up the potency of that with the facelift. So the L3 in this can bring you down to 6 kilometers an hour,
Okay.
but it doesn't bring you down to a stop. And it's the same thing you had mentioned back then as well. It's a switch. It's not a gradation. So the pedal isn't sensitive for regen. It's just it goes to a particular point and then it says, okay, regen on. So in L3, it feels a little sharp because it suddenly comes on. So you'll feel it that way, but it's useful. L2, L1, you can use easily. The power in normal drive mode is restricted to, if I'm not wrong, 90 kilowatts, which is about 120 horsepower. It's only in sport mode that goes up to the full 167.
Yeah, which is fine.
And torque is the same across all the models, the Nexon and the Curvv, 215 Newton meters. So performance wise, when you get in and drive this, it's not going to suddenly feel like a step up either.
Okay.
It's going to feel very familiar. It feels usable for driving in the city. It's smooth on the highway to overtake. It's easy. It feels good.
Okay.
There's no problem over there. The couple of things that they have changed and which are nice to see is that in terms of notifications, earlier they used to have for the drive mode selector, when you used to switch drive modes, it used to go city drive mode selected. Okay, and then you went to sport drive mode selected. So annoying.
And you couldn't switch it off.
That was always on. So that has been taken out with this. So it's nice. Every time you change the drive mode, you're like, oh.
So it just goes bing or something.
Nothing. It makes no sound.
Oh, good.
Now, that interestingly, now you feel like, hey, why doesn't my instrument cluster make it a bit more obvious that I have changed modes? Because all you see in the instrument cluster now is not a change of colors or graphics or anything like
Right.
that. It's just that little mode display saying eco, city, sport. That's it.
Yeah, but I remember that when we were driving automatics earlier, including from the Germans, the D would change to S, suggesting that you'd put the gearbox from drive mode to sport and back, especially the DSG gearboxes. I don't remember feeling like I needed more information about my selection. Is it that the button is not tactile enough or something that you need more notification? It's just a thing that would improve your experience.
Because it's an infinite scroll. So you're never sure of which one you've gone to. And because there's literally no way of seeing unless you go to that one spot and see which mode you've gone to, whether you're in the right one or not. Like, let's say I've been in normal. And this dial is a bit confusing for me anyways, because which way do I go to which mode? Which as a user, you'll get used
And how many modes? 2 modes?
3 modes.
Three
Eco,
modes.
normal, and sport. That's about it. So just that familiarity, I guess, can build, but in terms of, because you have a full digital screen, and today's day and age, you would expect that if you're in sport mode, look a little bit more racy, that kind of stuff. That
Which they haven't done.
which is not there.
Okay.
But anyways, so that's, and talking about sounds, they also have this thing called AVAS. So it's the audio.
Audio visual allowing system. Oh, I'm not supposed to do that on this show. I'm so sorry. Audio visual?
He's trying. He's trying.
Audio visual?
I don't know actually.
Okay.
Audio, whatever.
Assistance system.
For EVs, low speed usage, city use, to warn.
Oh, this is the system that go drawing because you're at low speed and
Yeah.
you let the pedestrians know. Oh, no, actually, it is a genuinely useful system. You know Tanya? Tanya has been surprised by, I think it's an MGZS EV, which is in our building. And that MGZS has run over Tanya nearly 2 times now. And both times she was playing with a dog or something like that, distracted within the colony's road. It's not a big deal. But both times the
She got
ZS sneaked up on
startled.
her. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's common. So this has this audio alert. So when you're driving under 20 kilometers an hour, it makes a wow sound, which is good because people will hear you come at those speeds. The problem is that over time, it got a little annoying for me inside the cabin.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Because if you're stuck in a slow moving Bombay traffic jam, you're basically going to be going drawing for the half an hour that you're in. Oh no.
So it was a little bit more audible inside the cabin than I would have liked.
Okay.
We've used this system even in the Hyundai Ioniq 5. And yes, you can hear it, but not so obviously.
Got it.
It's far more subtle. This is far more obvious on the outside.
Understood. So the distinction between, hey, listen, there is an EV coming, get out of the way, and hey, you're driving an EV has not been clarified enough.
It's like, yeah, something's coming. What is it? You've moved into that zone.
And you have a slightly annoyed driver inside because they are very aware that they're driving a curve slowly.
So they have different settings for it. There's a startup mode, so there's some sound it makes when you start up the car, and then for the driving, luckily it's all switchable. So that's the good thing.
So drawing you can switch off?
I don't know which one is drawing, man.
As in the slow speed
yeah,
awareness
you
thing.
can switch it off.
So you can sneak up. I did see the Garner and Conan clip. I'm not sure if snuck is a word or not, but
What?
they know.
Okay.
So you can switch off this awareness mode if you feel like it, and it will not make a sound as it approaches pedestrians or whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
So you can do that.
Which is fair. Then you can make as much noise as you want. If I have the option of turning it off, then we are okay.
Yeah, that was also my issue because after somewhere in my notes I've written, because I drove around Udaipur, we were outside Udaipur, and I drove through a lot of rural roads, and invariably we were behind slower rickshaws and stuff like that. So a lot of that, and at some point I said, it sounds like the car is wheezing because it's like. I'm like, no man, it's getting to me now. So I did ask at the end of it, and I found it in the menu. You can switch it off, so it's
Okay. Then we are okay.
yeah, it's fine. Which brings us to other assistance systems. It has level 2 ADAS.
Okay.
It's only on the top spec variant, if I'm not wrong. Again, the good thing about the system now, the thing that I can appreciate clearly is that the interventions are smoother. They're basically less intrusive. So when it's the lane keep assist lane departure warning is telling you, hey, you're drifting out of the lane, it's subtle. It's like it's not getting in your way.
Right.
So it's nice. The ADAS system itself, we will continue to say this, you don't really need it. You should 100% not rely on it blindly. And it's a great way to bump up margins, and that continues to be the case for a lot of features you don't really need. So just keep that in mind. Anyways, about the ADAS.
And if you're going to use the ADAS system, remember it's very effective at creating social media content. But until the calibrations get better and software understands the chaos of Indian traffic a lot more, the interventions will not always make logical sense, which is what we are waiting for. When that day comes and the ADAS systems become both invisible and extremely useful, we'll be the first one to say, now it makes sense, you should use it. Until that day, if it is even 10% chance that it will make an intervention when none is required, we'd just rather you didn't pay for this feature straight up.
It's like ABS once upon a time, right?
Yeah.
The braking distance of ABS could be more than what a human could do, right?
And the interventions were so unsubtle that it would also frighten you a little bit and scare you into wondering whether this system will continue to function till the stop happens or whatever, or fail somewhere along the way or do something weird. And it is a weird thing. I'll give you an example. Early BMWs, just after they had ABS, had also had servo brakes, which means there was a servo motor increasing the performance of the brake. right? And the first time I rode, I think it was an R1150 RT or something like that. When I hit the brake, I nearly forgot. I thought I would never have children again. Because I just never expected that the brakes would come on that strong, because I didn't apply a lot of force, but a non-servo brake disc would produce a reliably soft amount of brake force at that point of time. BMW overreacted, which was great, which was okay, fine, we got used to it. Later in the same shoot, it was downhill and the bike was running low on fuel. So I thought, instead of riding it down on power, I'll switch it off. I'll roll down to the bottom and make a U-turn.
God.
And at the end, when I was going ready to make my U-turn, no danger, nobody, I didn't hurt anybody, there was no danger to me. When I hit the brake, nothing happened. Because without the servos, the disc brakes don't work. It's the breaking of the expectation that was the problem. And what we're saying about electronic systems, all of them, including ADAS, which is at the top of this, is it needs to become something that we expect to intervene when we expect it to intervene. And when it intervenes without us knowing, you should realize that it happened because I wasn't aware of a situation, not because it suddenly decided there was a situation, which has happened to us with other ADAS systems often enough for us to say ADAS is not critical to your good driving today. It's not a system you can rely on today and say it'll take care of me, I'll just do it. That's the logic for it.
And in this case, what I did try out was lane keep assist, where I would say that it seems helpful, but it's not really that helpful, because on the more winding roads, it would wait till it got to the edge of the road, I mean edge of the lane, the marking, and then start steering.
Yep.
And if it felt that the curvature was too much, it would give up.
Correct.
So you had to be like prepared to catch it.
Correct.
Because I was testing it out. Normally you would anyways have your hand on the wheel, but that was too sudden. I mean, that behavior of when to cut out. So that learning process that we have to adapt to that system is the thing that I don't like. Like ABS as well. I'm going to go back to that. Because for a long time, not all the systems were this close. Each vehicle's ABS used to work differently. So you would be like, I don't know how this is going to work, what it's going to be like on sandy conditions or water. So you had to learn. Today, they're all pretty much at the same level. And that's why it's a tool today.
Correct.
Rather than a technology development phase.
Correct. And just to give you another example, and not saying one is better than the other, but I drove a BMW lane keep assist ADAS 2-level system, and about, I'm going to say 3 years later or 2 years later, I drove a Volvo ADAS level 2 system, both on windy roads, both I think in Spain, both with somebody in the car. And in the BMW's case, what he was saying was happening. The car was reacting too late by me. So it would start to drift out of the lane and then panic and bring you back. And that meant that in that BMW, we had to pay a lot of attention to what the car was doing and being ready to catch the system. Right? But 2 years later, and it's more process evolution and calibration than the Volvo doing a superior system, but the Volvo was so effortless at staying in the middle of the lane even when the turns came, that our sense of being alert to catch the car's mistake was a lot lower. And it took 3, 4, 5, 8 kilometers for us to say, hey, this Volvo is really confident about lane keeping, so I don't have to keep like a hawk eye watch on it. I'm okay to back off a little bit. That's when that system becomes effective.
For a feature that we're basically asking you to turn off or not buy, we're talking about it so much so that you for yourself can decide when it's working and it's working well for you.
Correct.
Right? So in terms of the way the car rides and drives, it's familiar. So we spoke about the powertrain, and the same thing applies even for the way the suspension works.
Okay.
Okay? Which is to say that it's not the most polished. It has a fair bit of movement about it. But the good thing, like Tata does with a lot of their suspensions, is that when it comes to big hits, it soaks it up nicely.
Okay.
So it's not the most settled car. It's not the car that will keep you tireless over distances the best. You will feel the surface. Even on smoother roads, you'll feel that little bit of jitteriness, that kind of stuff. And overall, the suspension setup is actually on the softer side, I would say.
Okay.
I would have expected this top spec version to be a bit on the firmer side given the additional weight, because what was happening is when we were driving through corners, and because it has more performance, when you would accelerate, you could feel it doing this a bit.
Yeah.
Right? So it would just do this slight lift. So you could feel those movements, and all of that kind of makes me feel like I wish I'd also driven the 45, which is lighter, and seen what that felt like. Maybe that would feel like a better balance. I don't know where the suspension was set up for which one as the primary vehicle.
And you are saying that the longer range version is sitting lower to the ground because the suspension is the same but the weight is higher. So
they even said that we've tuned the suspension differently. In which case, why is the ground clearance lower? I'm not sure.
Right.
Right, because you would compromise for that. So at the same time, I do think if the suspension tune is different and that car is lighter by 70, 80, 90 kilograms, maybe it'll feel a little bit better.
Okay.
In terms
Now,
of
sorry, but it's sounding like a Scorpio to me in the sense of there's forward and pitch.
not that bad.
There should be some roll also then.
So it has a certain amount of roll. It's soft, but not that soft.
Okay.
Okay, it's on the softer side. If I have to pick an issue with the car,
So Curvv.EV owners don't have to steal bags from aircraft, like a Scorpio N owner might have to.
oh no, that's not the case.
No, I'm just establishing facts.
No, they don't have to do that. It's just it's that same thing like with the Nexon, where it feels plush. You feel like it has this ability to soak up stuff going over rough stuff, and it makes that feel. It feels gracious over that, I'll put it that way. But when things become smooth, instead of it settling down and then just moving along, it's still like kind of busy.
Got it.
Right? It remains busy, and I think that is the
I think
shortcoming.
you made this point on one of the podcasts where certain cars have a great ride quality for the test drive. And then when you start living with it, you discover that the softness you discovered in the test drive doesn't translate to a great living experience. This is sounding more or less like that.
So you will feel this. You will feel this clearly. Like when you do a test drive, you'll go over a speed breaker or pothole and you'll be like, "Wow, this is soaking up so nicely." And on that note, it's on 18-inch rims. This car, and we didn't speak about the design at all, but it's got those.
But it looks like the Nexon, no?
From the front, yeah, from the sides, then it gets swoopy and all of that. And yeah, I know we didn't talk about the design at all because for me, it's like a. Yeah, if you like it, it's okay. To me, it looks a little awkward.
Okay.
It looks a little overdone. I don't think of it as a pretty design. I think of it as a busy design.
Okay.
It looks a bit too raised. It looks a bit too chunky. So it's
So the curves of the curve are a little bit off as far
it's
as you're
actually
concerned.
not so curvy. That's the thing. Only the roof line has that fastback aspect to it, but it's not really a curvy car, so to speak.
Okay.
I think there was more softness to the X6 back then.
Yeah.
As opposed to the Curvv. The Curvv is more.
No, and the X6 I think is physically such a large vehicle that the size itself causes the design to have a certain appeal and aura. Like I remember we were driving something like a Honda City, reasonably low slung, and there was an X6 in front of us.
Look like a tank.
And when you look up, you're basically looking at the exhaust of the X6
Yeah.
eye to eye. And at that point, the fact that the roof has a curve and it's an odd design at that point of time or whatever, it's just, wow, that thing is huge, right?
Yeah.
It's a very narrow perception.
It's massive.
Yeah.
Correct. So talking about the X6 and sporty handling was one of the things about the X6. And with the Curvv, it's
Not sporty.
it's fun-ish, not really fun.
Okay.
I don't think the steering motor I checked because it felt smoother than the Nexons, but Nexons was a little erratic, not very natural feeling all the time. This weighs up nicely, so even at higher speeds, it still feels predictable. It just feels consistent. That's how I would put it. It doesn't feel strange at lower speeds or at higher speeds. It feels the same way throughout, and in that sense, it's easy.
But I'm assuming
Not
that the
involving.
suspension movement we talked about does give you a sense of the weight of this car.
Yeah. And I will come to certain factors right towards the end.
Yeah. I'm just saying because I'm correlating to driving the Q5 electric, which is the e-tron, up Jebel Hafid, the mountain road. And when we were going up, we were chilling because we were low on range and we had to
You were
film.
the Q8.
No, the small one, the
Or
e-tron.
you drove the Q5.
The Q5 equivalent. And going up Jebel Hafid, we were a little bit low on range. We still had to film, so we weren't pushing it. When we got to the top, we met a camera person we were familiar with before, who we shot with before. And he said, oh, it's only these many kilometers to the charging station. So you can go and have a little bit of fun and come back. In that process, it turns and it goes where you point it, but that sense of massive weight is something that is inescapable in that car. And it's capable and it's holding its line, whatever. But you're aware that you're driving a really hefty car. And that takes away the crispness of the experience somewhat. Is that...
No. So I would say that was an issue with I think we're reaching a stage of EVs where that sense is no longer the predominant sense.
Okay.
it'll come in as a subtle feel in the background, but that's not the overarching theme
Got it.
in the driving experience.
Got it.
We saw this even with the Punch EV, in fact, that was a smaller car and it felt so good, right? Even here, the weight is not obvious in that sense. But when you're in corners, you will feel that roll a little bit. When you're going through potholes, do you feel the weight of the car? No. But do you get every now and then when you hit, let's say, something that surprises you, you're not expecting a bump. It happened to me, right? I hit a bump and then it got tossed up.
Got it.
But the way it landed again, it was like, oh wow, it didn't crash.
Yeah, something 300 kilos heavier than you were
Yeah.
expecting landed, right?
So that maturity, I think, is coming into the cars in the EVs also of the mass market, and we've seen it with the Punch and we see it with the Curvv as well. That is not the thing.
So some amount of fun can be had in the curves in the Curvv.
I think, yeah, you can. The only thing with the Curvv was, I think the tires that it had, the Goodyears, they started to get noisy a little bit faster than I expected. So the sense of, hey, let's push this, let's have fun, didn't happen all that much.
But it's a passenger car, so I'm assuming that early warnings is perhaps better than late warnings.
With the back seat, I'm not thinking of the passenger car, I'm thinking of this as a front seat car actually.
Okay.
Right? And we got to drive on some really lovely roads outside of Udaipur. Twisty, one-lane roads going up mountains. This place, what was it called? I'll put it in the comments. I've forgotten the name right now. But really nice place. I think most of the people ended up shooting over there. Really awesome. And I'm getting the conversation of the range now because I want you to understand what all we did. So the first part of the drive was 30 kilometers just around the hotel with some people from Tata Motors. And
Like a feedback session.
like just to get a download on the car.
Okay.
What's happened, what it's at, and that.
So like a moving briefing, as
Yeah.
it were. Okay.
30 kilometers came back, and it was I think already 8:30 or so by the time then I headed out. It's important, that's why I'm sharing this. 8:30 or so. So I've done 30 kilometers at that point. I come back to the hotel at 1 o'clock. And at that point, I'd completed 200 kilometers. So we clocked a lot of kilometers in those 3.5 hours. Right? In that were those hills, those winding roads, and a lot of up and down. It was just small hills. So you're going up, going down, going up, going down.
Right.
They were broken roads. So a lot of accelerating, stopping, all of that.
So
it
as
was
suboptimal for an EV as it is possible to make it.
absolutely. And then because I wanted to clock a lot of kilometers, I headed out on the highway. So I went towards Jodhpur, the Jodhpur highway, did that, long run on that one. Getting to that highway included making my way through the city, which was a lot of like industrial bits. So not really slow traffic, but slow-ish. Again, a lot of stop-go, but not slow. In the sense of you're not just crawling, you're going, stopping, okay, now you make way, get going again. So that kind of stuff. So it was not easy driving.
Okay.
So I was keen to run out of battery as far as possible, in the sense that go as low as possible.
So you wanted to throw a curveball at the curve.
Yeah. So it was a curveball because my only goal was how much can I drop the battery down to by the time I get back, and how much range do I get in that? So did I drive carefully? Not at all. Did I drive in eco? Barely. I was in normal or I was in sport. And at that point, because we're pretty much going brochure-less, briefing-less into these drives, and it's awesome. So I didn't even know what top speed it had, so I wanted to see that. So at some places where off the highway there were nice sections, I tried that, which means sport mode, full power, trying to find out. And as it turned out, it's about 160 kilometers an hour. So doing all those kind of runs, driving at highway speeds. I like one of the things, the sensations that hit me doing all of this was the big difference between the Nexon, buying a Nexon, and buying this would be it's not fearless just in terms of the variant. You feel that way when driving it.
Okay.
So you're no longer that range.
That range anxiety thing is a thing of the past.
Like, so I did all of this. I went back, I had about 23% charge remaining, and I had covered 200 kilometers.
Right.
So from the claim of 400 kilometers that you can do to coming to 200 sounds shocking. It's like, whoa, that's crap.
Yeah, but if you go back to driving an EV like an EV is meant to be driven, you have 23% left, means you still have something like 100, 190 kilometers of range left.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you have 100 kilometers
decent,
of range. And I did some math after that, because when we did the Nexon EV, with its 40 kilowatt hour battery pack. With that, our range claim, what we saw in our repeated use was about 260 to 280. And we said if you're just in the city, over 300 is possible. Now, if you take the same thing and extrapolate that to a 55 kilowatt hour battery pack,
Yeah.
you will land up at the 380 mark easy.
Right.
So doing that in a normal scenario, getting up to 380, 400 is sorted. Like if for me, doing Pune to Mumbai, if I had to do that with the Curvv, the 55, I could be as fearless as I wanted, drive how much I wanted in a day, and not think about charging and make it back home.
Correct. Except that he would charge in the office because then the office pays that charging bill instead of his house, and because he's Marwadi, he would calculate for that too.
Ayo, my God, this is getting personal.
I said I will not make fun of Tata Motors. I
So
didn't
he's
say anything
making
about
fun
you.
of me. Superb. I think go back to making fun of Tata Motors. Okay, so in terms of the range, that is the one clear big benefit that the Curvv offers you, because that style of driving, and I was driving, I kept going towards Jodhpur, just like, and I didn't turn back on the basis of the charge, it was on the basis of the time. I had
Right.
Google Maps on, always locked into the hotel, so I would know that I will get back by 1:15 so I can make it for my flight.
Yeah, so this is a great symbol of how we test EVs today. A lot of us do this. We leave our origin, having navigation set for our origin, and you're basically riding or driving up, always monitoring the range left and the distance back to the origin, so that you can't run out, because obviously it's really embarrassing to run out in the middle of a test drive because you're like, what were you trying? And second, there's always a flight or something to catch, or a meeting at the end of it or whatever, which you don't want to miss, and you don't want to be stuck in economy mode at the end where performance is being derated. You have to go slower than usual. So all of us run navigation back to our origin when we do this, which is it's just how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is how I drove, and kind to the car in terms of driving, not at all. I think it was fearless driving, and I was so pleased about that.
Okay.
It was the first time that I was in an EV, and I just felt like, yeah, drive, it's okay. You don't have to think about charging. And
Right. So can we take it as a tenet or a precept that if a car says the numbers that this car is showing, which is what, 500 on
585 was their claim.
nearly 600 in the test conditions, nearly 400 real world, then range anxiety for 99% of prospective buyers is a thing of the past.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think we discussed this in one of the previous ones where we said at one time the figure was 300.
Correct. And now we said we want 400.
We want 400. And I think at 400, it genuinely it transitions from being the second car in the house
Correct.
to being the only car in the house also.
Yeah.
It can be that.
But okay, now let's steer the conversation back to the Curvv. Can this be your only car? Is it good enough?
No, not because of the back seat, it just can't.
I'm not making fun of them. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm just trying to dude, you guys are being unfair now, okay?
Okay, and now in this, we will come to the smaller stuff.
Yeah.
Which
with Tata Motors is always.
Yeah, so in the cabin, the dashboard is the same as the Nexon. There are certain different materials in use, certain different finishes, so that it looks more premium. But the layout of the dashboard, the abundance of piano black, the capacitive touch switches, all of that is the same. And yeah, talking about that, it has a powered charging door.
Okay.
Which is on the nose, like with the...
Didn't I read somewhere that powered charging door's been having trouble opening and closing or releasing the charge connector or some such?
So charge connector releasing has turned out to be an issue with existing Tata EVs. I didn't charge this, so I don't know if it's an issue, but it could very well be an issue, continue to be an issue.
No, I'm just recalling because I can't remember if it was the Punch or the Nexon. It was something where I think the connector is in the nose, so I'm assuming it's the Nexon, where a lot of people are saying that, yeah, everything works, but when you try to go release the charge connector.
It's not in the nose, that's the Punch. That would be the Punch then.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, in this case, it's a motorized door because it's powered. Weird thing for me was that the switch, there's no real way of knowing when the door is open because you can't hear it when you're sitting inside.
Right.
So you can't see it, you can't hear it. You just have to get out of the car and see khul gaya kya, right? And so that's a little awkward.
So there's no animation on one of the screens that says charging door is open?
So there's a light on the switch which goes white or yellow, but which I didn't know at first, right?
Understood.
So it's just like, okay, has it open, has it not? So you do it a couple of times and you figure like, okay, it's working. I couldn't for the life of me figure out if it actually has a latch, like a lock, because when it didn't open at first, you could just pull it open.
Maybe it has to do with the central locking on the car, and the car is locked, the door latches into place like a fuel lid would on
Maybe.
maybe petrol car.
The point is that if it doesn't open, you can pull it open.
Okay.
One, and it has that feature push to close also. So when you just push it, it'll close. It has the motorized close will kick in. And on that note, that tailgate, for the massive boot, is powered as well and has 6 settings that you can set it up to.
6 settings for what?
So powered tailgates, you can check it out. If your car has a powered tailgate, this will be applicable for all of them. With the button, you can program the height to which it opens.
Why would I want it to be open anything less than full height?
Because if you're shorter,
you can't reach the button to close
can't
it.
get to the
Understood. Okay.
yeah, and sometimes it can also be because your parking space doesn't have that much clearance.
Understood.
Because the tailgate is opening high.
Got it.
So then you want to restrict that. So in that
Oh,
case,
it's a menu setting somewhere and you go in.
it's just that switch. Wherever you wanted to stop, you just press and
Understood.
hold like that.
Okay.
So
I have a picture of some small guy. For the first time, he's bought a car. He's not very tall, and then he's basically jumping to press it at the right time so that
I want to save him the trouble. He's thinking about me.
you're not short. You're 5'6".
Oh,
That's the
so you're being
average
nice
Indian
again.
height.
Huh? Oh, he just called me average. That was sweetly done as well.
Hello, you are perfect for testing vehicles because you are the average height of the Indian buyer. I don't know how much better you can get. I am the one disadvantaged by being nearly 6 foot tall because I am disadvantaged because I can't tell what the ergonomics is supposed to be for a lot of things.
Shit, Shumi. I had never thought about that. But poor you, yeah. Feeling bad for you now.
You should, as you should, yes.
Okay, and talking about bad, quality is
That's a great way to open this segment.
okay.
How is the quality of the Curvv, Kartik?
Not bad, but not great either.
Why, what is tilted this time? Sorry, I didn't mean that. Is there anything wrong with this car?
No, the touchscreen in fact felt nicely aligned. The door also felt okay. The logo is still slightly tilted, but I'll leave it at that.
The front, the outside one.
Yeah, on the nose, very slightly, but okay. And like somebody pointed out the last time when we looked at it for the punch, somebody said, no, it's not the logo that's tilted. The door itself is slightly cross. I said, whatever it may be, slightly it was there on the car. Touchscreen, little bit responsiveness can be inconsistent.
Okay.
So small stuff.
Pre-production cars, regular production, regular software.
Regular, because all these have been in use now. That it's a 12.3-inch screen, which is the one we've seen in the Harrier, in the Safari,
Right.
in the Nexon EV.
Correct.
Right. So this has been in use, and we've seen that inconsistency in them as well.
Okay.
So that
So
exists.
at least it's not unexpected.
No, it is what it is. It's nothing great in terms of consistency. Now the same thing, LED DRLs, the eyebrows, one of them went off on our car.
This was winking at you, bro. It liked you.
There's a video I'll share. Somebody else pointed out to me as I was driving along, and so we took a video because obviously I couldn't see it. But this was a recurring theme. It wasn't just my car.
If I remember correctly, when I saw the footage from the press conference, the Curvv launch press conference, I think there were cars there whose DRLs were winking in and out.
Correct.
Am I correct?
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Right. So that was the issue there. Did I have any issues other than that? Other than the door, the charging door, unable to make out, and initially it did not work. Aside from that, nothing really that was an issue. But other people did. Somebody got locked. The door lock wouldn't work.
Oh,
Yeah.
this car is a car that loves people. I think you guys are perceiving this wrong.
Yeah.
It winked at you because it liked you. That particular journalist who got locked inside, it just didn't want it to leave and abandon it and go away. And you know, like a dog tries to keep the owner in the house and not let. That's what it was doing. You guys are just misinterpreting this.
And the last one, which was the real disappointment for me, because it's a new one. It's not an old one. Is a mechanical thing. Like I told you, we were driving on those hilly, twisty roads, which were rural roads. So there were some parts were good, some parts were broken, and every now and then you'd hit a pothole and you'd hear this sound.
Okay.
And this is typically, I'm going to end up thinking about the front subframe or the lower arm, basically the arm somewhere at the mounting point. It's getting this.
There's some play that and two pieces of metal are clapping
Oh
against
my
each other.
God, that sound was terrible. Like it made you wince. And it was again left side, right side, not just my car, because I checked with a few other people. Other people also had the same issue. So this is a new thing for me. I have not heard of this sound in.
And maybe it's part of the ADAS system warning you to be more cautious with the car.
So
Did I keep a straight face to that?
yeah,
Oh,
and
awesome.
I'm just gonna run through this. It is what it is. You
Okay.
can, and I'm gonna come to this story now. So I met somebody recently on one of the drives. We started talking. He was in a Tata Altroz, and I was very happy to meet him. He was very happy to meet me. We just bumped into each other, and happy to just chat. And his introduction was, we're a family of Tata fans, and I was like, awesome. So the first thing he tells me is, aside from my Altroz, we have a Hexa and we have a Tiago, and I was like, super. So it's good to hear about this. So he said, I asked him, how's your experience been? He said, it's been great. I said, awesome. So why were you? So we met outside a service center. So I said, so why were you here with your Altroz? Because I'd just seen him, and that's where we bumped into each other.
Right.
So he said, because my alternator belt went. I was like, okay. I don't remember, except for my W124, which is a 30-year-old car. I don't remember changing an alternator belt on any of my cars.
Like ever, yeah.
Yeah, so okay. I said, fine. So he said, yeah, it was there for 3 days. Okay, 3 days for that. I said, okay. So we were just generally chatting about stuff. Then, and unprompted, he kept coming up with instances, and I will tell you the instances. The Hexa, I asked him, is it a manual or an automatic? Because the automatics, one of my friends has one, and the auto has failed. So he's in a bit of a soup. But he bought a second-hand used automatic for that from another Hexa, which was being scrapped and stuff like that. So
I love vehicles where you have to buy a second one for spares. It's awesome. This is how my RD350 career started.
yeah, so I asked him out of concern that, do you have an automatic? Because in which case, just a advice that watch out, take care of the automatic. So he said, no, I have the manual. I said, awesome, then you don't have anything to worry about. So yeah, but you know what? One of the door locks went. The motor just went. So when we went to the service center, they said, this is normal. This is a known thing for Hexas. The door lock goes. I said, okay, fine. No problem.
Does that mean it doesn't lock, or does that mean it doesn't unlock?
It just doesn't work.
Okay.
The motor doesn't work, so it just doesn't work, right? So that was said to me. Then he said, oh, there's the other issue, the aircon vents. The plastics, the aircon vents break. And the service center said that this is normal, this is known. It happens because, they go from being hot to being cold and then hot again, and because of those cycles, the plastics break. So I said, okay, sure. So finally, after all this, I said, this is my concern when recommending a Tata. It's not that the car doesn't have a great set of values. It's just the predictability of what experience is going to offer to the person I'm recommending it to that holds me back.
Sure.
Because I feel responsible having had made that recommendation. At which he turned around and said, oh, I know exactly what you mean. I said, what do you mean? He said, because all of us are so into Tatas. One of our friends, she wanted to buy a car and she asked me for advice, and I recommended a Nexon to her. And she bought one, and it was all okay. The safety angle was appealing to her, and it was well priced. But then she got into a bit of an accident, not a major accident, and then it was in the workshop. And then next thing, she called him saying that, hey, the car's been in there for over a month and nothing has happened. I'm really feeling stranded by this service.
Maybe the door's locked and they couldn't get in.
Yeah, so she felt let down by the service experience, and he felt that guilt about it as well. And the reason why I'm telling you this is, a lot of these, this is normal, has been around in the system for very long.
Yeah.
Like I remember ages, I think must have been 2007 or 2008. At that point, driving a Safari, and we went to return it to the dealership. And when we were just discussing the car, one of the things, they were asking for feedback. So we said that the engine's a bit noisy. So the response was, oh, so it needs a better music system.
That's so clever.
So when everything can be explained away as being normal, and everything can be explained away as being that we know about this is a known issue, then I don't see how the experience can actually get better.
I'll tell you, very easy, Karthik. Stop recommending the cars.
So I'm going to come to the second story. This was a conversation with somebody senior from Tata Motors. And we were discussing the Nexon, sorry, I call it the Nexon. So the Nexon Curvv. And I just asked, and this was my first time, because you remember I told you, I've not seen the Curvv in the flesh at all.
Correct.
It was first shown at Bharat Mobility, we were not there.
Right.
On the preview, we were not there. This is the first time we were getting to see, touch, feel, and experience the car.
Yeah.
And so when I got in the car, I was genuinely taken aback. Not because of the familiarity with the Nexon, but because it had the same misses. The dashboard can be the same. It's fine. It's all right. You can make peace with that. But the ergonomics, the fact that the cup holder is not there, it's just a wireless charger. So I did ask.
But they straightened the screen, man. What do you want?
Yeah, that I'm glad for that. So I asked, why does this not have cup holders? And the answer I got was, I got a question in response, was, do you want to prioritize cup holders or a wireless charger?
For 20 lakh rupees, I want both.
To which I said, why do I have to choose? To which I got another question, which was, which car do you know that has both?
Wow.
And at that point, I was flummoxed. And
I mean, he threw you a curveball right there.
yeah. And so I said, let's take, for example, the Exter, which is a 7, 8, 9, 10 lakh rupee car. It has the charger at the right place, which is forward of the gear lever. The cup holders are where you'd expect it to be. The only choice really left to be made once you fix the wireless charger point as at the center console is, do I put the cup holders ahead of the gear lever or behind the gear lever?
Correct.
But that's normal. So in this, my takeaway was that if things are being explained away inside the company, things are being explained away at the dealership level, then I don't see these things being fixed. And this requires somebody right at the top. And I'm not saying Tata Motors, Tata Group, if they really want to fix this, then it has to be top down. Because at this level, at this rate, and with this kind of reasoning, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I would like you to try this. Say world class and then say third class. And you'll realize that in pronunciation, at least, the difference is not a lot.
It was, yeah.
Good. So I'm glad that it was a familiar experience for you. A few things have moved forward. And the few things that you were hoping would move forward have not. Great. So I'm feeling like when this car comes for testing, you're going to struggle to recommend this car also.
See, the premise of this car to me very clearly is if you want to get one, you are somebody who wants to drive and doesn't want to be driven. I think that's clear. You're somebody who is really looking to use this as the primary car. So which means you intend to use it. Because when you're going to spend this much money, like 22 lakh rupees for the top spec Curvv, also brings you in the range of the MG ZS EV.
Yeah.
Right? And not too far away now, at 25 lakh rupees, is the BYD Atto 3.
Right.
It won't have as many features, but it won't have as much range as well. But the entire experience in that car
Is a far more superior experience, yeah.
It's a car that you will buy and hang on to for much longer and use with more ease, with more sophistication.
And that's still staying within the EV ecosystem.
Exactly.
At 25 lakh rupees, there are far superior vehicles than this with the ICEs.
Yeah. And on that note, this has 70 kilowatt fast charging. So it's pretty good on that front. So when you look at 22 lakh rupees, you're talking about MG ZS EV. You're looking at BYD Atto 3 for a little bit more. And ZS EV, again, lower spec variant, all of that. But more power, better backseat, not as much range, but a car that feels more complete as a family car in the first place.
Right.
Not just a great boot and great range. So, front seat, extended usage.
Got it. Understood.
That's about
I
it.
have all the points. I need to make a quick summary.
All right. Any more questions?
Not really. I was hoping that you would perceive a quality movement and that this car would be more effortless at being effortless, as it were. And that doesn't seem to have happened.
So quality-wise, like I said, it's familiar. Fewer things went wrong. So in that sense, if you have to look at an upward trajectory, okay, it's better.
No, at that point, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, yeah. And if you scrape through the bottom, then the light will come through and say, oh, sunlight. I mean, that's not really an argument.
And so for me, finally, the coming back to what is really holding back this curve is the backseat experience.
Yeah.
Because you've taken the strongest point of the Nexon for a car that looks and feels so much like the Nexon, and you've taken away its biggest advantage for the sake of a bigger boot, and to be able to say that it fits into the segment above and therefore can be priced higher.
So if they were to do a longer range version of the Nexon with this battery pack, you think it would automatically be a far superior vehicle to the Curvv?
Easy.
Okay,
Easy.
great.
Because the Nexon's boot is smaller, but it's not terrible by any yardstick. I think in the sub 4 meters SUV segment, I think it would be second or third best, and the top two are pretty solid. I mean, places to be. So it's a usable car. The back seat is, I mean, that back seat is so good. That from that to come to this, in terms of knee room, in terms of just the under thigh support, is disappointing.
Okay, good to know.
Listen, I'm sorry, my fault. I missed out on one thing, which should be brought up: the key.
Okay.
They have a new key, and it really does feel good. It's got these nice metallic sides, and the center portion is in black, and it feels like it's glossy black, so it doesn't look clicky, and looks hard. But when you go to it, the three buttons, they're soft. It's a soft material, so it feels really nice to hold and use. So the sense of premiumness from that has definitely gone up, and it has you'll see slight dimples on it, so you can feel that with your fingers. So even without looking at the key, over time you'll get used to knowing which button is which, and using that. So that is a small but I think a good improvement in terms of electronics. And this one I want to bring up because we complained about it in the Nexon, which was the blind view monitor. When you indicate the feed from that side's camera, used to come on the infotainment screen. Now it comes in the driver's instrument cluster. So they have fixed that on this car, and apparently that can go as a software update to the other vehicles as well. Yeah, that's it.
Time for my non-critical quick summary of the Tata Curvv. Are you ready? Tata has launched the Curvv Electric. We'll discuss the internal combustion engine version of this car after we drive it, which is going to happen later. To start at pricing, it's a little bit more expensive than the Nexon, and you get two battery packs as a choice, and both the battery packs have more range than the Nexons do. The top version of this actually claims to be nearly 600 kilometers of certified range, nearly 400 in the real world. And the big takeaway for Kartik was that when you get a car with 400 kilometers of real world range, a lot of what would constitute range anxiety simply goes away. And since this car has 70 kilowatt fast charging, it's also a pretty fast charging car if you're out on the highway and using a commercial charging station. So in that sense, we said the Nexon EV long range was just short of being your primary vehicle. You'd have to think of it as a good secondary. But with the Curvv, he says, at least on the powertrain front in terms of the range, you are looking at a car that could easily be your only vehicle in the garage, be fully electric and be fully functional with your family. The problem with that we'll come to, but what you should also know is performance is very similar to the Nexon. It's marginally quicker to 100 or whatever, and in that sense, the way you drive it, the feelings that you'll get inside are very similar to the Nexon, which shouldn't be a surprise because the cabin also feels extremely similar to the Nexon. And if you've seen our Nexon EV, MotorInc First or View or whatever, the Curvv will look more or less exactly the same. So the screens are the same size, the software is the same. If you thought that software was glitchy, this is also glitchy. It certainly is a little bit laggy. We said the driving position on the Nexon was a little bit odd, so it is in the Curvv, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to go into details on that. The difference is that the Nexon's biggest asset was the rear seat, which was one of the best seats in that class. And because the Curvv has a curved roofline, hence the name, it's a fastback, what you're missing now is the headroom. Now you can recline the second row, but reclining the second row doesn't really work if you're even as tall as 5'8" or something like that, you'll always feel like it's a little bit clamped and a little bit closed. The advantage of the Curvv is it's a significantly larger car than the Nexon, so you do have more boot space. But I'm not convinced that if your second row passengers aren't happy, having their suitcases feel happy is a great trade-off to have. And in that sense, Karthik also said that if this battery pack, this range would come to the Nexon as the Nexon is right now, it would immediately become a superior car to the Curvv, even if the prices were to come to roughly the same level. In terms of all of the equipment levels, they are very, very similar. We've not discussed all of the variants and personalities because it would distract us from the fact that the Curvv seems to move the price up. It seems to create a new body style, but it doesn't seem to improve on the Nexon in any fundamentally meaningful way apart from the range addition itself, for which obviously you pay a little bit extra. Karthik also said that like we have experience with other Tata cars, the Curvv launch drives also were not niggle free. There were small issues like DRLs coming on and off. There were small issues like people getting locked in cars. But fundamentally, it doesn't seem like the overall quality of the product has improved, which is what we've been looking forward to Tata having solved as soon as possible. And that's where Karthik's biggest disappointment has come from so far. If you were to buy a Curvv, you should, especially if you're planning to drive it a lot as your primary car, aim for the higher range version. But it's not like the lower range version is much worse, except we haven't driven the lower range version, and we are expecting, because it's lighter, the comfort level of the lower range version might actually be slightly superior to the higher range version. What we mean by that is the suspension seems reasonably soft and it does a pretty good job on broken and moderately broken roads, but when the roads smoothen out, it continues to move around a little bit, which can get a little bit tiring and a little bit annoying. Apart from that though, around the corners, it has more feel and feedback from the steering than the Nexon, and you're likely to enjoy the Curvv a lot more, which fits very well into the idea that this is very much a front seat passenger and driver's car rather than the second row's car. So if you're trying to be chauffeur driven, maybe you don't want to be in the Curvv because your chauffeur's going to have fun and you probably aren't.
Awesome.
All good?
कुछ नहीं छोड़ small things.
And there are small software updates like Tata would show you your blind spot mirror camera feed in the middle of the car. Now they moved it to the driver's instrument cluster, so that's a little bit better. So there are small updates like this. We will have a view story and the FAQ series where we'll cover this car in full detail once it comes for testing. So I'm not going to go into the details, but the upshot is that the range and the powertrain of the Curvv are really impressive. But the rest of the car is too close to the Nexon to represent a step up in quality or premium or any of these things. And most of the niggles, oddities, or strangeness that we've seen on the Nexon have carried straight into the Curvv as well, which is a little bit of a source of disappointment for us. And what Karthik did underline is being slightly disappointed with Tata seems to be the new normal, which we are extremely upset about.
And I'm going to quickly do one thing. Remember in the punch you had said that the vehicle to load charging button was in the boot. It's the same here as well. The ventilated seat switches in the Nexon and the other vehicles are on the side of the seat rather being integrated into the instrument cluster. That's the same over here. So those kind of fixes have also not happened. Better integration has not happened. And you ended the note on saying that, the quality aspect of it, which is why I actually told you the story about the customer that I met.
Right.
If that works for you, that's fine. It's your call.
Yeah.
But we don't consider that to be the norm or that to be acceptable.
Yeah.
But that's finally your call, and if it works and suits your life and your choices, then by all means go ahead. We just would love to hear from you as your ownership experience goes along. Right? Yeah. And with regards to Tata Motors, I really do hope that this internal "it's okay" conversation is taken out.
Yeah, this "it's okay" conversation is not okay.
That's a good one.
I said I wouldn't make fun of them, and I think I've done a really good job. So if you have any further questions, please do feel free to leave us a comment. We try and answer as many comments as we can, and we'll get you the best answer that we've got. So until we see you the next time on View or Balance or First or Disconnect or whatever, Tata.